Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, if you can read, which I suspect you can because this is a primarily book focused YouTube channel, no shade if you can't read, we all start somewhere. I'm gonna be talking about some of the pros and maybe a couple of cons that I have noticed in owning, and choosing to own my books rather than borrow them from a library or have an e-reader of any kind. I guess at least that's my preferred method of reading, is a physical book. So got a list of 5 pros and 3 cons that I have experienced. Feel free to let me know down below with a comment if a pro or con that you have to having a larger collection of physical books. So without further ado, if you're new here, consider subscribing. I'm uploading on that gravy train, baby, about 3 times a week. So if you like this style of content, consider sticking around. Give it a like if you liked it and things of that nature, yada, yada, yada. Let's get into it. So, like I said, I have a list, 5 pros, 3 cons. We'll start with the pros first and move into the cons a bit later, because I do think that there are more pros than cons to owning physical media in a more digital age. So yeah, we'll get things kicked off here. I have it pulled up on my monitor if you see me looking down a little bit. He says in a more physical media in a more digital age, as he has digital notes talking about physical media. Already off to a hot start. But the first pro that I have is that in owning so many books, I never have something that doesn't interest me. There's never a book on my there's never no book on my shelf that I don't want to read. Now, at the time of recording this, I have no idea how many books I own. I would have to estimate. I actually have no idea. I would probably have to estimate 350 maybe. And that could be way off. It could be more like 250. It could be even as high as 400. I don't think it's 400. It's probably somewhere in the 300-ish books, which to some people is like, holy shit, that's a lot. But to others, it's like what they buy within a year. Other booktuber people who this is their full-time job and they have tax write-offs and things of that nature. That's just sort of what they do. But yeah, I have to guess I own about 350 books, give or take. So yeah, I've never something that doesn't interest me, and this sort of ties into my second pro here. Pro number 2 is that if I get an idea to read a book, or if I just have that itch to read a certain book, or I'm in a certain mood to read a certain type of book, and I have it, then I already have it. And the barrier to entry of procuring that book is basically null. Case in point, if you saw my last video in regards to how a play about books inspired me to start reading Moby Dick, that is just that. And this happens a multitude of times. Most of my books that I pick to read are inspired by someone recommending it to me online, or TikTok book recommendations, or what have you. And so this sort of plays into effect more than I originally anticipated, with the biggest case of picking up Moby Dick due to that play I saw. If you haven't watched that video, go check it out. I think it's a pretty good one, just my weekly reading recap, but talk about a play that I saw regarding this sort of talk that I play about a book club and the books they read, and it was awesome. So go check that video out. I'll link it down below if you have not seen it already. So yeah, always, if I have something that, if I'm in a certain mood that I want to read a specific book and I already own it, then boom, if I get inspired to read a book and I already own it, awesome. Third pro here, sort of 2 parts, or I guess 2 in the same, is that I can also lend people or flat out give them books from my collection if they're in need of a book, or if they ask me, and this has happened a couple of times. I originally lent my older sister, a copy of Stephen King's The Stand. Turned into me actually giving it to her, while her just not returning it to me, so I never forget. But I just bought a different copy of The Stand, and that wasn't mass market paperback, so in the end, who's really the winner? I've lent my girlfriend a couple of books here and there. And yeah, I've given books as gifts to my parents, to my siblings. I've lent them books that I think that they would like, and that is the joy in reading, I find, is sharing it with others. That is the big thing that I don't talk about enough, I think, on this channel, is like sharing reading and what you read with other people. And I guess that's originally the whole point of this channel, so it all comes full circle in the end. But yeah, giving books as gifts, finding out someone else has read the same book that you read, and then being able to talk about it. Things like book clubs, for example. I think it's better to have that physical book copy in gifting books and lending books or otherwise. So that is pro number 3. Moving on to number 4, something that I personally find, and I know a lot of people resonate with this, is that in my experience, having more books around your living quarters, I'll call it. So here I'm in my home library. There's 2 bookshelves you can see behind me. There's another one sort of off camera, a tree bookshelf. If you see some of my older videos, it's one of those. I have books in my bedroom on my nightstand. I have my Charles Dickens books under my TV stand as sort of the focal point of my living room. I have another bookshelf of classic books in my living room by one of my reading chairs. And so a good 4, 5, 6 places around my not huge apartment, pretty small apartment, means that I just am constantly surrounded by books, and the idea of reading, and that if I am in the mood to read, then it's always within reach. And me, I am a very if you watch, this is sort of related in the sense, but if you watch my grocery haul video, I said I have to be very careful with those Reese's peanut butter cups, because if they're in my apartment, then I will eat them. And if they're in my pantry, and if I see them all the time, then I'm more inclined to eat them. It works in the same way in my brain for reading. If I have books laying around in various places, I'm more tempted to read and choose that as a pastime instead of doom scrolling on my phone or watching TV. Those all have its time and place, and I do that a lot, but yeah, just reading in general with having more books around, I find, makes that process go a bit smoother. And last but not least, pro here, sort of, I guess the smallest one, the one that doesn't come up too often, is that it makes rereading books a whole heck of a lot easier. If you already own the books, you can connect the dots, and it gets pretty easy to reread a book when you already own it. This has happened to me with the Harry Potter books. I believe if you watch like my first video on this channel, or one of my earlier videos, it was talking about the books that got me into reading. Harry Potter was on one of those. I grew up watching all the movies, never read the books cover to cover until 2022, I believe, when I started reading. Read all the Harry Potter books in about a month. I know that's not an insane feat as it is like a children's book, but still, since then I've reread them 2 or 3 times, and that has just been good to have them. I've reread, what other books have I reread? I've definitely reread other books. The Song of Achilles, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Those are just some off the top of my head. But yeah, having them in physical form, like I said, when you're in the mood to read a certain book, you already own it. The rest is history. Now let's move on to some cons here. I only have 3 here, but some of them can be pretty big. And the first and foremost is the monetary aspect of it. Books these days are not cheap, no matter if you buy them new or no matter if you buy them used. You get a half-price books, a book is $8 or $9. That's not nothing. It can stack up quickly if you go in like me and you never leave with just one. It's actually something I had to budget into my monthly budget. It was like set aside money for me to have to buy books, and I can't go over that. I never got to a point where I was like, I don't know, working a corner to try to make ends meet for the month because I was buying too many books, but it is definitely not a zero impact on my monthly ledger. We'll say it in that sense. But yeah, books are expensive. I would say I buy 95% of my books used. It's just cheaper, and I'm very particular in the books I do buy, I guess edition wise and condition wise, edition and condition. That was a tongue twister. But yeah, if I go to Half Price Books and I can thumb through the pages, I make sure it has no annotations on it. I make sure I always have a coupon for Half Price Books. I make sure the books are in good condition, the spines aren't mangled, and things like that. So because the books are generally the same price no matter the condition at a used bookstore, and so trying to find the best condition one, in my mind, makes just the most sense in terms of saving money. I've also been an addict of thrift books. Books are much cheaper on thrift books than Half Price Books. You can get a book at thrift books for $5, $6, $7 instead of $8, $9, $10, $12 at Half Price Books. Doesn't seem like a whole lot, but you buy 3 or 4 books. Yeah, that's what, $8 to $12 right back in your pocket for you. And thrift books has a rewards program where you can get what is it? Like every $40 you spend, you get a $7 free book, I believe, or a amount to buy up until $7 and it's free. So may not sound like very tempting, but it adds up. If you do a couple of thrift books, book hauls over the year, you may land yourself a couple freebies as well. I certainly have done that many times. So yeah, money aside, what is another con? They may seem small in comparison to the money aspect of it, but another con I have, and this is sort of like suffering from success, but I find that sometimes picking my next book can be challenging because I have so many and I have so many books I want to read. I often just get around to not reading any of the books that I want to read and just picking like, I don't know, one that I'm not so interested in. It makes no sense in my head, but that's just sort of the way my brain works. I have all these books I want to read and have wanted to read for some time, but in that same amount of time I bought more books. My interests have changed, but the books that I wanted to read previously are still on my shelves, and so it can feel a little weird. You're buying all these books, you have books you want to read, and so that's where sort of book buying bans got popular. And I've definitely, I haven't said I've gone through a book buying ban by any stretch, but I've lessened the books that I have bought. We'll say that in that sense. So yeah, overwhelming choices as my second con. And last but not least, something I just recently, that's the word, experienced is moving apartments, and that with all these physical books sucks. It was an entire carload full, my entire car. If you watched one of my vlogs, I would drive a not small car, but I guess it is a little hatchback. It is a smallish car, but it was a full car full of just boxes of books. And that was a pain. They're heavy, they take up a lot of space. They sort of had to just sit there until you can get a bookshelf in and put them appropriately away. They take a while to pack, you don't want to damage them. They're sort of like fragile goods in a sense that you don't want to drop them and crease them and things like that. So just a bit annoying to move, to put that lightly. And yeah, that when it all is said and done, the pros definitely outweigh the cons, in my opinion. Let me know down below if that is not the case for you, if you prefer an e-reader, if you prefer audiobooks. What kind of form of book do you prefer? Clearly, I prefer the physical books. There you go. That's my 2 cents on it. Let me know your 2 cents down below. As always, consider subscribing if you're new. Leave a like if you liked it. Appreciate you sticking with me up until this point if you have on this little rant here. And let me know down below what are some of your pros, what are some of your cons of owning physical books, or maybe just reading in general. Let's start a conversation down below. Yeah, appreciate you being here. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for hanging out, guys.